Hi, it's Derek here, host Talking with Famous People, and tonight I'm going to teach Angela in about why she's wrong. I'm going to try to do it as gently as possible, unlike usual, where I school the shit out of people. But she's annoyed me successfully enough to justify a video. Uh, Starts with this. This guy says host Tim is a ENTJ, not an ENTP. I say he tests sometimes ENTP, sometimes ENTJ. I agree his vocal cadence is ENTJ-ish, but he's not an ENTJ. And then Angela chimes in. He's thinking out loud because he's using TENI. I say, actually, it works the opposite way. NETI thinks as they speak, while NITE prepares thoughts before voicing them. She says, no, I'm an ENTJ. I do it. I say, listen, Angela, you don't. If you did, you'd sound like an NTP. Here's what I mean. Improvisation is the domain of NE. To dispute that is to display a complete misunderstanding of cognitive functions. NI produces holistic truths. NE determines potentialities. TENI is admittedly much more fluid than NITE, but not in the fashion you say. ENTJ learns chunks, masters, and then executes. NETI equals creating. NITE equals executing. She says it's not coming from improvisation. We can agree to disagree. I say I don't like to agree to disagree. Whenever that happens, a wrong person is getting away with wrongness. Now, I wouldn't wish that awful potentiality on myself, for sure, but if you'd like to desist in disagreeing, in the absence of my agreement, that would be fine, as my unanswered rebuttal has rendered your position currently not standing, and thus there is no disagreement as you have been disabused of your claim. She says, NI is sort of like a database, yet predictive. You need the right syntax to retrieve and manipulate. When NI is triggered, TE structures our thoughts. It helps to think out aloud as we are TE dominant. Regardless, you should still tell him to re-examine the functions. He should also look into LIE's creative function. I say, Angela, okay, so you've attempted here to sidestep my warrant while also sort of answering it by restating your original point from a different angle. The reality is you're guilty of equivocation. You refer to the near real-time execution of a planned communication as to think out loud, but you're simply abusing the words such that they mean the opposite of their actual meaning. Now, he may or may not be well served to look into LIE's creative function. Regardless, you provided no standing reason for him to do so, and the fact that you still advocate an action consistent with your conclusion, despite its having been dismantled and not rebuilt, is a troubling indicator. Certainly, I'd advise against listening to you, and unlike you, I have actual reason still standing. Now, Angela says, certainly, how certain are you? You have two people saying otherwise. It's selfish to not assess further. Let me be clear. You failed to understand my analogy. What he's describing is NI as a creative function. But I guess we'll never know unless he figures it out. No, you're not. Look, see, Angela, this is part of the problem, right? Angela doesn't understand that that's not what we're arguing about. She says, you fail to understand my analogy. But your point is that it's thinking out loud, thinking and talking at the same time, like figuring it out as you go. And that's a TENI thing. Now, it might be that, but your explanation for why doesn't explain why it's that. You just say, well, it's because there's a pool and a syntax. You do not explain, nor should anybody have any reason to understand why it would be the case that that would lead to the outcome you're talking about. When I call you on it, you say you are, first of all, you say that you have two people saying otherwise. It's selfish not to assess further. No, that you misplaced the burden. Okay, we are arguing about your claim, which is not standing. It would be irrational and evil to assess further until you've established something worth assessing. Let me be clear. You fail to understand my analogy. I understand it and I negate it. That's different than not understanding. For the record, I provided you with two different ways to answer the question, yet you don't understand and want me to spell it out for you. No, you didn't provide me. You're not supposed to provide me ways to answer the question. You're supposed to answer the question. Okay? If you provide me ways to answer the question, that assumes I want to agree with you. But that would be terrible, terrible, terrible to try to help you be right, because then you wouldn't have any impetus to be right. Then you'd be wrong for sure. So, look, what are the two different ways that you think that you provided me to answer the question and that I don't understand? You've talked about a database called NI. You've talked about a syntax called TE, right? You say when NI is triggered, TE structures our thoughts. Okay, that provides me something I could use that's true to generate a reason why what you're saying is true. But I don't want to do that. That's your responsibility. You've failed to use that to actually provide a reason why it's true. Okay? What you've done is said, here's TE, here's NI. They have this relationship to each other. Therefore, thinking out loud. Not a warrant, not a justification. To warrant it would sound something like this. NI and TE function as a database and a syntax. And the nature of TE is such that it can function in real time to render an equivalency to improvisation. Because you've conceded you're not talking about improvisation, and yet thinking out loud necessarily has an improvisational quality. It's not predetermined. So you've double bound yourself. Now, the thing is, what you keep mistaking as your fundamental notion is that I should do your work for you. That you provide me enough reasons to come up with a reason why you're true, and I'm being difficult and not understanding. No, you need to defend your position. You're making the claim. Remember, we're not arguing about my claim about ENTPs and ENTJs. We're arguing about your claim about thinking out loud. So, you don't understand and want me to spell it out for you. Do your research. Have you read Psychological Types, Individual Socionics, Neuroscience Personality? Okay, so, Angela, again, you're making the claim. It doesn't matter what I've read. It doesn't matter what I haven't read. My research is irrelevant. You failed to establish your claim. I've said this to you clearly. You've lied and misrepresented your situation in saying that you have established your claim and I'm just failing to understand. That's not true. You failed to make your claim, failed to substantiate it. You made your claim and you failed to substantiate it. Okay? It's that simple. So it doesn't stand. That means we can't consider it. Anything that comes after is fruit from the poisonous tree. Now, you say I have a simplistic understanding of NI, but I haven't made any claims about NI. I've simply pointed out that your claims don't stand because you're making the claims, right? We're not arguing about the claims that I made. I have made claims about Tim being an ENTP, but that's not what we're arguing about. NITE prepares thoughts before voicing them, and NITE executing explains everything. Anyone with a basic understanding of NI knows there's no thoughts being prepared before voicing them, like a staffer writing talking points. NI is abstract and needs a starting point. My example explains this. NI is the database. TE is the syntax. NI is creative function also explains this. Not explaining here. Okay, so let's look at some things here. First of all, my simplistic understanding. If your understanding of NI is not precise, you don't have a definition of it, then the claims you're making are pointless mush, first of all. And so you have to understand some sort of distinction between factual understanding of things and nonsense, right? So if you say talking out loud, thinking out loud means you're improvising, you're speaking. You've already indicated it's not improvised. You agree that that's NETI. You have yourself in a situation now where you're trying to say, yeah, but it's still improvised, and it's more complicated than that. It's more mushed out. It's not anything precise after all. So you say here, anyone with a basic understanding of NI knows. First of all, anyone with a basic understanding of argumentation knows that is not a warrant for anything, and it's not even anything that can be falsified, and it's a ridiculous statement. There's no thoughts being prepared before voicing them, like staff writing talking points. Okay, so you say you're thinking out loud when you're talking. It's coming out real time. You're not having to prepare ahead of time. And yet, your dominant function is what? It's a judging function. Interesting. So, can you explain that difference? You're saying you don't make any judgment about it before you say it? ENTPs are famous for thinking out loud, saying shit before they've really evaluated it, because they're saying it as they're thinking it. They don't have time to really judge it first, Thinking out loud, right? But you have a judging function first, Angela. Can you explain that? Contradiction? You try to say there's room in my notion for me to be right. There is. That doesn't meet your burden, girl. Not even remotely. Okay? So your failure is abject, complete, and disgusting. Let's continue. NI is abstract and is a starting point. My example explains. My example explains this. NI is the database, TE is the syntax, NI as a creative function also explains this. Explains what? That you think out loud so that you're not actually judging first, that it's happening in real time. Are you arguing that there's an equivalency with TINE, NI? Or are you saying that that's actually the improvisational pair for functions? Are you disputing the fact that NE is a function that tends to improvise and generate things on the fly? Or are you disputing the fact that thinking out loud requires you to generate stuff on the fly? If you're saying that you do generate stuff on the fly, are you saying that you are doing a workaround so that you create the same effect of NETI? Or are you saying it's the domain of TENI? You say here that you've explained enough, but you haven't explained anything. You haven't. NI is the database, TE is the syntax, NI is a creative function, does not explain how it is that you think out loud. To explain how it is that you think out loud, you'd have to address the many contradictions that I've pointed out already. If it is thinking out loud, then what is it that NETI is doing? If it is thinking out loud, then how is it distinct from improvisation? If it is thinking out loud, then why is it that you have a judgment function first, which would imply that there'd be some sort of judgment in close to real time before you actually say what it is that's coming into your mind? That would be the standard understanding of things anyway. So, Angela, you're full of shit. I tell you that before I read this last paragraph. Your attacks are amusing. They're not attacks, Angela. The fact that you view them as attacks means you're desperately attached to your wrongness. Okay? They're liberations. That's what they are. I'm liberating you from your fucking wrongness. What evidence do you have supporting your claim that he's an ENTP? Nothing. It's possible he's a sexual subtype 9, therefore appearing so. I'm not arguing that argument now, Angela. We aren't arguing about whether he's an ENTP. If you want to make that argument, fine. I haven't made any claims about it, so we're not arguing it. I mean, I may have in the video, but that's not what we're arguing about here. What are we arguing about? Do you remember? Does it matter to you? Angela, does it matter? Do you think it matters if you know what you're arguing about? Do you think it matters if you know which claim we're arguing about? It does. Do you think it matters, Angela, if you provide an actual warrant to explain why having a database and a syntax means that you think out loud? Can you explain that, Angela? Not what the reason is now. It's too late for that. Can you explain why it is you expected me to buy this shit when you provided no reason? Can you explain why it is that you say you provided a reason by telling me that NI is a database and TE is syntax? Can you explain why it is that you think that's a reason? You can't, because you don't know. Because you're wrong and you're a fucking idiot. Okay? So, little message for you here at the end of this video. It wasn't quite as gentle as I thought it was. When you roll in pedantic, when you roll in full of yourself, and you start saying shit like my attacks are amusing, well, the reason I get offended is not because I don't like having my skills belittled or whatever. It's because it's not you doing that, Okay? It's this demon spirit of wrongness within you doing that. And so I try to exercise that demon spirit of wrongness. It leads many people astray. It leads you astray. It led you astray into thinking that this was a good place for you to come rolling in pedantic with your wrongness. However, if you're gonna roll in pedantic, you better be well equipped than you were. You came with nothing, you brought nothing, you laid out nothing, and then you insisted that nothing should have done something, but it didn't and it never will. Not around here, except lead me to kicking your ass from a wrong town into sit there and think about it circle. All right? So enjoy your flight there, and you sit there and think about it, little missy, because you are WRONG wrong.